So what insights from your research for your dissertation do you want to share? What have you found in all of your reading and researching?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good insight that you've already shared is that there is a gap, right? In the fact that you've struggled with it and I've struggled
Mhm.
with it. And I think both of us are pretty conscious teachers or try to be conscious, but some of these things are unconscious, right? If we're not aware of what possibilities are, then how could we possibly, be showing those practices in our classroom? So the first thing about my training is it's been extremely deep and very focused. So for the past 5.5 years, I've been reading a lot of peer-reviewed studies related to L2 listening, taking some hardcore linguistics courses, and just studying a lot of educational theory. And my doctoral advisor, Dr. Beth Warren, she's really been instrumental in this training. And although her focus is more on STEM education, and she does a lot more with the K through 12 world, we both share this deep commitment for reaching a wide range of educators and learners, and we both value cultural and linguistic diversity. So the first insight I would say I really have is that there's a lot of literature on listening that's kind of pretty much flown under the radar. And I think that's perhaps the root of the problem, is that we actually have roughly 5 empirical waves of studies. But for some reason, our graduate TESOL training courses haven't really effectively tapped into this research.
Mm-hmm.
So the teachers who are training future teachers, I don't think are fully prepared to teach listening effectively.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very complicated skill, so that's partly why, because there are so many moving parts to it, it's hard to really narrow down what this invisible, skill is. And another part of it is that historically, I think a lot of English teachers that have been hired in programs were hired because they were native speakers of English. And why that's problematic is that we learn to listen in utero. We basically learn through the intonation patterns of our mothers, how segmentals and supersegmentals work. And so, there's this idea that if you're unconsciously learning it in your first language, then how would you know how to consciously teach it as a second language to someone else who hasn't grown up in that same linguistic environment, right? It's very different. Our phonological systems, say, even between English and Chinese, as we know, are very, very different. So I really don't have all the answers to all of that and how it works. I think that's, for me, more of my lifelong career work. But the second insight I've really had too is that, we have a lot of models in second language acquisition, but the field itself, I don't feel like it's really settled on any one, guiding theory. And the communicative approach has been wonderful for many, many reasons, but there's also some challenges with it, because in this idea of getting everyone just to talk and talk to each other, listen to this movie, take some notes, here are some comprehension questions that follow, we're not really attending to that, how to kind of attune to the different words, where word boundaries are, more the bottom up stuff that you and I have talked about at length. In other words, like more of the decoding skills. So not that I think that we don't need to have one theory. I think classrooms need to be philosophically diverse, not just culturally and linguistically diverse, but we need many ideas out there.
Yeah.
But one thing Beth has really taught me too is to push more of these boundaries and try to lose the dichotomy. And the big dichotomy I think that's there is this idea of implicit versus explicit teaching. And do we explicitly give, present the grammar and then have students work on it in pairs on a worksheet to practice it and then do a role play and produce it at the end of class? Or do we give them something and hope that they'll, figure out what the grammar structures are more implicitly? And, listening is generally treated as a very implicit skill. So there's a lot of gray area in between the implicit and explicit interface. And VanPatten has done a lot of work on this, and other scholars that I won't go into, because I don't want to go, into the theory of second language acquisition. But I think there are other theories that we can draw from. I've also been reading a lot Vygotsky and learning more about educational theory, and looking at the design-based research. So I guess the third insight I've had is that we need to think more about this and attend to this more. I think there's a lot of room there to create a more systematic approach to L2 listening pedagogy. And I think that this includes the development of new resources that really touch upon this complexity of what listening in foreign language entails for learners, especially who are acquiring as, a second, third, fourth, nth language as adults.
Yeah.